Chairman Brown, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Pinocchi's present. Had some problems logging in.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson, are you on?
When I first entered my passcode, it said that I was muted and no one could hear me. I was just an attendee. But when I entered it a third time, it worked. So others could be experiencing that problem.
Commissioner Pinocchi, thank you. Vice Chair Johnson, are you on?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. Staff ready? Good morning. It is now 9:33 a.m. on the 14th of January, 2021. And it's time for our regularly scheduled work session. The Montana Public Service Commission welcomes public comment. If there is a member of the public who would like to comment on anything within our jurisdiction, they can't come to the podium, I'll say that, but they can call in, as I understand. It's my understanding that there is no public comment at this time. So at this point in time, let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right. So the first action item is the approval of commission minutes for the week of January 4th, 2021.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It is moved by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second?
I second, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Commissioner Fielder has seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes of January 4th, 2021 as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those opposed, same sign. Seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved as drafted. All right. Action item number 2 is commission initiated. Any discussion on legislation that has been introduced or scheduled for a hearing?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, nothing new is added to the list for this week, so I have nothing to bring up. However, I would like to update you, House Bill 85, the Commission's bill to clarify the cost tracking adjustment statute passed out of the House Threat Committee unanimously. So that will be moving on to the Senate. Nothing has been scheduled yet, though. And House Bill 99, which was Representative Hammond's bill dealing with pre-approval statutes, the hearing for that was canceled and has not been rescheduled yet.
Questions?
Is that by the same committee, Fred?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner O'Donnell, yes, that would also be in the House.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Commissioner Fielder?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 99 and our position on that. I think we might have jumped the gun on that a bit. I'd like to look at that further. The amendment, that bill came out of ETIC in one form, and then we supported altering that bill substantially. So I think we should slow down on that and bring that up for reconsideration either today or at a future meeting. At your pleasure, Mr. Chairman. I know you're doing a little bit of work on that too.
Is it the commissioner's pleasure that we put House Bill 99 on the agenda for next week to reconsider that bill?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. Is there You want to do that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that House Bill 99 be brought up for reconsideration at the next work session, next
Second.
regularly scheduled work session.
Commissioner Fielder's moved. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there discussion? I'll make a comment. Commissioner Fielder, I agree with you. We may have been a bit hasty on our vote on that matter and taking a position on House Bill 99. I'd appreciate a few more days to take a deeper look at that bill, so I'll be supporting your motion. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of putting House Bill 99 on our work session for next Tuesday for reconsideration, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All those opposed? Same sign. Seeing no option, the motion carries unanimously. Any other updates?
That is all I have for this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for your good work this week. We will now move to agenda item number 2. This is also commission initiated. Rulemaking for utility long-term resource planning and competitive solicitations for electric resources to discuss initiating a docket to request public comment on draft rules.
That's me again, Mr. Chairman. So House Bill 597 passed last session, and it changed a lot of the requirements for long-term resource plans and competitive solicitations. It also required rulemaking on our part. Our rules on this subject have not been updated since 1992, and as you can imagine, the resource planning process has changed quite a bit since then. So we did our best to go through and overhaul our rules to update them and to comply with the requirements that are found in House Bill 597. This is just an initial stage. We're planning on putting this out for public comment if the commission approves, and then we'll receive comments from all of the parties. I'm sure they'll all have something to say about these rules. And from there, we'll decide what we would want to submit to the Secretary of State's office for draft rules. Once it's submitted to the Secretary of State, it would then have a public hearing where we would receive more comments before the rules would then be finalized. So there are several steps along the way to change these rules, and this is just the very initial stage in the process. Staff is recommending that the commission initiate a docket so that they could submit these draft rules for public comment. Will and I are happy to answer any questions you have. I sent out a draft so that you're able to read through those. I don't think I need to go through it all today, but I am happy to answer questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell jumped in first. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Sorry, Commissioner Johnson. I think you're the victim of the two-second lag on any of these. I didn't mean to jump in front of you. So please, I yield to the Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt staff recommendation in this docket and direct them to initiate soliciting public comment with regard to this rulemaking.
Second.
There's been a motion made by Vice Chair Johnson. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Discussion? Commissioner Fielder?
I'll call the question, Mr. Chairman.
Question's been called. All those in favor of Vice Chair Johnson's motion signify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, I did want to make a comment on that, is that it seems to me that public input is always a very welcome thing for us to have on any issue that we're going to undertake. Thank you.
I apologize, Commissioner O'Donnell, for jumping the gun perhaps on moving the question. All those opposed to the motion signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. All right, we will now turn to action item number 3. Action item number 3 is commission initiated. This is to appoint a new rule reviewer pursuant to Montana Code annotated section 2-4-110 to appoint a rule reviewer and alternate. Who is handling this matter?
Chairman Brown, that's me. This is Luke Casey.
Mr. Casey, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this very brief. Montana Code Annotated 2-4-110 requires that each agency must appoint an attorney, paralegal, or other qualified person for the agency to review rules, notices, etc. that are submitted to the Secretary of State. Our former rule reviewer and sole rule reviewer was former Chief Legal Counsel. We are now left without a rule reviewer. Staff is proposing that the commission appoint myself as acting Chief Legal Counsel as the rule reviewer with Zach Rogala as an alternate rule reviewer. That's all I have. If any of you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just a clarification. I think it is item number 8 on our agenda today to appoint interim chief legal counsel. So it's a little premature. I have no problem with Mr. Casey assuming that role, but I just wanted to clarify the record on that matter.
Mr. O'Donnell, your comments are appreciated. Let the record note that at this moment, Mr. Casey is the acting Chief Legal Counsel, and we will be acting interim. Thank you. And we will be having a commission-initiated discussion later this morning on this action item. Now to the substance of the action item, Commissioner Fielder.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission appoint Luke Casey to be our rule reviewer with Zach Ricala to be the alternate.
Commissioner Fielder's moved. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Discussion? I do have a procedural question, Mr. Casey. And my question is, it's my understanding that this is required by Montana law, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then how do we notify the Secretary of State?
Chairman, Commissioners, that will be done via a letter to the Secretary of State. I believe that letter is already drafted. So once this item is approved, we'll prepare that and send it on to the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. Action item number 4 is docket number 2020.07.088. Haver Pipeline Company, annual application to adjust rates and charges to direct rural farmstead customers to consider a final draft order granting the requested rate adjustment. And who's handling this on?
Commissioner Brown, this is Lucas Hamilton. I'll take this one, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can, Lucas. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Brown and Commissioners. Today, we have for your consideration the draft final order on Haver Pipeline Company's application. Haver Pipeline filed this application with the Commission on July 31 of 2020. In its application, Haver Pipeline requested an increase to the total rate paid by its rural farmstead customers for natural gas service from 86.28 cents per thousand cubic feet to 94.75 cents. So that's a change of 8.47 cents. In 1985, the Commission approved a stipulation for rate-making procedures that allows Haver Pipeline to apply for an annual rate adjustment. That's discussed in paragraph 6 of the draft final order. And in 2017, the Commission approved a method for calculating the gas supply component of Haver Pipeline's rates. That's discussed in paragraph 7 of the draft final order. The present application complies with the Commission's orders from 1985 and 2017. The commission previously approved a rate change on an interim basis in this matter. That was effective October 1 of 2020. And that effective date is contemplated by the commission's 1985 order. Commission staff now recommends approval of the rate on a final basis. Accordingly, the commission staff recommends that the commission adopt a motion to approve and issue the draft final order in docket 2020.07.088. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. I would also note that I believe Joel Tierney is with us to answer any other questions you may have that I can't answer.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Joel has his hand up. Yeah, I see that.
I'm sorry if I do. I might have hit it, not meaning to.
Well, I think, Mr. Tierney, you're going to have to make some form of substantive comment at this point now.
I'm not used to Zoom. Excuse me.
Well, I'll take that as a substantive comment. Commissioner Fielder.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for Lucas Hamilton to help me come up to speed on this issue. It sounds like it's been in the works for a while, but I understood that the rate was 80 or is currently 86.2%, and this request is to move it to 94.75%. Is that correct?
Great question, Commissioner. It's cents per 1,000 cubic feet. So not percentage, but it is 86.28 cents per 1,000 cubic feet currently, and that'll be moving up to 94.75.
Okay, and so I didn't do the math on that, but that's an increase of about 10%. Is that correct? Close to that.
Yes. I off the top of my head, I'd say it's just slightly under 10%, but yes, I think you're right.
And am I to understand this correctly, that this is an annual rate increase, or has this been in the works for quite some time? You referred to something quite long ago. How long has it been since the last increase was done?
A great question, Commissioner. I might need to refer to Joel for his historical knowledge of how these adjustments have taken place in the past and when the last time we had an increase was. I will say that, sorry, go ahead.
Just let me say that my concern is I'm reading that this is an annual application to adjust rates, and it's looking to me like it's about a 10% annual increase. So could you please explain if I'm wrong about that or if I'm correct in that?
Certainly, Commissioner. For the tracker period that we're looking at here, the cost of the gas supply was about 10% higher than it was for the prior period. So it is in this year an increase of just shy of 10%. That fluctuates, though. This is in a sense a tracker, so it's meant to match the actual supply costs that Havre Pipeline Company incurs. So from year to year, that percentage change will be different, and it will depend on the underlying cost of the supply that they provide to their customers.
And so this, Mr. Chairman, Lucas, this increase is based on having undergone the thorough scrutiny of their rate analysis division then, is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner. The applicant here, Havre Pipeline Company, which is owned by Northwestern Energy, supplied worksheets that documented the price paid for the supply in each month of the tracker period, as compared to the cost to buy that supply from third parties. And as discussed in the order, it was slightly cheaper to go from bulkheads owned and operated by Northwestern rather than, wellheads operated by Northwestern rather than a third party provider. So yes, I think it is correct to say that we have reviewed all of the supporting information submitted with Northwestern's application that does justify the increase requested here. I would also, if you don't mind, Commissioner, kick this over to Joel to see if he has any other additional input on it.
Hi, this is Joel. Commissioner Fielder, this comparison is made only with the producers in the area up there. So they take the weighted cost of gas for the production on the Northwestern system and base it against the weighted cost of gas of third-party producers in that area. They take the cheaper of those two numbers, which this time it turned out to be Northwestern Energy, and then they add on a 19-cent non-gas component that was agreed to in the original settlement in 1985, and that's how they come up with the rate. Basically, it states that if the rates were to change more than 5% up or down, then they will file a tracker. There could be a year if the gas didn't change significantly, we wouldn't see it. And in 2019, I believe the cost of gas went down. It's this year's tracking period that the gas went up. And that's how they do it from year to year to year. And this only affects, it's roughly about 100 customers. There's separate class of customers that come off the gathering system up in the Tiger Ridge gas fields up south of Havre and Chinook. And it was basically came to be these producers when the pipeline was built back in the, I believe it was the late 60s by Northern Natural Gas. It's part of easement agreements. They had made agreements with these customers to give them gas. And so they negotiated this contract, and that's how it's evolved over time. These customers they're not based, or their costs are not compared to the normal Northwestern Energy gas customer. They're a separate class of customers.
Thank you for the explanation. I just have one further question, I think, Mr. Chairman, and that is regarding public comment. I'm not, having been on the job 8 days, I don't think I've seen all the public comment that's been forwarded to us. So has there been public comment on this topic?
I don't believe there has been. Northwestern Energy has notified all the customers per letter. That was part of the application. Generally, these customers, we really don't usually get a lot of public comment or kickback. The rates are fairly cheap. I mean, it's a pretty good rate that they're receiving. So I've not seen anybody that's filed any public comment in this.
Thank you. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joel, that was the bulk of what my question was going to be, but I just wondered, this as a matter of course, if Havre Pipeline or Northwestern or any entity making application, if they do receive letters of protest or unhappiness, do we have access? Do we ordinarily get that information, or?
Well, absolutely, Commissioner.
Okay,
yes,
good.
The Montana Consumer Council would intervene. In the past, we have, and on some of these, we have had hearings concerning these. We've gone to Havre and had hearings. So if there was intervention, then the commission would conduct a full hearing. It's just we did not get any intervention, so we're just basically going with a default order that was granted in the interim.
Thank you, Joel.
Commissioner Fielder, just to let you know, I did look in Eddie, and there has been no public comment on this topic.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold, please. Can you identify who you are?
Katie.
Okay.
Commissioner Pinocci.
Okay, just in case that was not recorded for the record, because Katie doesn't have a microphone, Katie Gordon has informed us that there has not been any public comment entered into our system on this topic. Thank you, Katie.
Commissioner Pinocci.
I sure want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let everybody know that this pipeline serves a small amount of people, and that certainly makes it expensive. However, I do want to point out that there's a lot of concern from the public that the public understands that natural gas is at an all-time low, an historic low, as they say. Now, this docket looks like it was filed in July. A question that the ratepayer might want to ask is this: has rates fallen since the docket was introduced in July, or have rates went up? Can someone answer that?
Commissioner Pinocci, this is Joel. I don't know. This is based on the tracker period that ended May 31st of 2020. So, and it's based on the production rates of the producers in that area. It's not it's in no way based against the market price of gas. So it's basically a separate entity that they're calculating their gas rates from. So,
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Commissioner Pannocci.
So I think what the ratepayer would want to make clear here is we're seeing lower gas rates than we have ever have before. Yet we're raising the price of natural gas to these customers. What would be a good answer to explain to them that this is the right thing to do, so that they know that question was asked just like I asked it? Could you try answering that, please?
I think, Commissioner Pannocci, there could be two questions. Is that one, if the cost of production for the gas in that area could be different than what the market price is, that could be completely different. The second part of that question would be, if gas prices have gone down since this tracking period of May 31st, then in the next tracking period in the next year, when they make their filing for that 12-month period, then that should include the cost of the gas from now through this tracking period. Because theoretically, we're in the next tracking period for next year, which goes from May to May. So if May 31st comes around in 2021 and gas prices have gone down, there's a possibility the filing would come in and then their prices have gone down. There's really no way to kind of track. I know what you're talking about, other than if you did that on a monthly basis. This is done on a 12-month basis. And so to answer your question, if we were going to track the cost of the gas of production, the gas production costs in those areas, you'd have to track them on a monthly basis to see if they were going up and down and adjust rates on a monthly basis, which really with these few customers and this type of an entity, it really probably wouldn't make sense. But so the next tracking period should bring the cost of gas. So they're going to be lagging. If cost of gas has gone down since this tracking period, then they're going to be lagging, because then the next tracking period will pick it up. Their next rate change would take their rates down.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow up by saying that customers around the state understand that the price of gas is an all-time low, so it's very confusing for the ratepayer to see their natural gas prices go up. I'm going to vote for this increase today because this line is a very small line serving a very small amount of people. So I've got to look at the cost per customer to be higher based on that. But the ratepayer may say, hey, how does our rates compare to, say, Northwest Energy? Does anyone have an answer? Is it like 10% higher than Northwest Energy? Is it about the same price? How do they compare to MDU? The ratepayer may appreciate that we ask that question. Does anyone have an answer for that?
I have not done that rate comparison. I think if Will is on the line, I believe he may know a little bit more about the Northwestern current rate on their regular tariff rate and the Northwestern or the MDU tariff rate.
Will, are you there?
Yes, he's approaching.
Will, is this a question you can answer?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Pannocci, I'll do my best. I don't know the current total Northwestern Energy rate off the top of my head. What I would say is that from what I've seen recently and from what I heard Lucas describe, and not having read the Haver pipeline application myself, Lucas described that I think this rate, once increased, will be, I think he said 92 cents or something like that per 1,000 cubic feet. And the current market price of natural gas that would be built into Northwestern Energy's supply tracker, I think, is in, it's probably, the market price is currently around $2, I believe, per 1,000 cubic feet. So as Joel said, I think this subset of natural gas customers are getting a fairly good rate on their natural gas because of the easement agreements that they entered into when these pipelines were constructed, and it's regular Northwestern Energy natural gas customers or MDU natural gas customers are likely paying quite a bit more than these customers.
Well, then that's probably the best. That's a great reason to point out that could be why we need to increase rates right there. So I will support this today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pinocci, any further questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will, I wanted to ask, is this one of these situations where we have over and under collections to make sure that nobody is excessive profiting off of something, or is it as Lucas pointed out, or Joel, that it's just simply reset once a year? And if there's any over collection or under collection, that's just the way it is.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner O'Donnell, yes, this is a tracking mechanism, which means any over or under recoveries are accounted for in subsequent rate adjustments. And I think that's consistent with the way Joel and Lucas described the mechanism.
Thank you. And that was exactly the point I wanted to, for Commissioner Pinocci in particular, is that if, let's say that if the rate was set on May 1st or May 31st, whatever Lucas said, on any particular year, if there happened to be a spike on that particular day, year after year, that it would be a poor representation of the year. So the fact that there's true-ups to it, I think that takes care of the situation very, very well. And I think we have a great system going. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions from the commission? Seeing none, the chair will ask a question. Mr. Hamilton, it's my understanding the Montana Consumer Council has confirmed that it will not seek additional process in this matter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Additional comment or question?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Johnson here.
Vice Chair Johnson.
These types of trackers are not a forward-looking endeavor on our part. It's not a projection of trying to get the price right going forward. This is, in fact, a true-up for a historical period that has been documented, and it's a true-up of either over or under collection for that previous period. So what we're doing as we go forward with this is fixing whatever was amiss in the previous billing period. So assuming, as was indicated by staff, that the analysis of the data submitted to us by the utility is accurate, and it appears to be in this case, we're really talking about a matter of arithmetic to true up, in this case, apparently an under collection for that period, as prices for the commodity they were providing were rising while they were functioning under a lower price. So this is a whole harmless situation for the consumer, and in fact, under statute, as I understand it, and Mr. Hamilton, correct me if I'm wrong, but once the over collection or the under collection is calculated, either the under collection is the utility is entitled to be made whole on that. If there's an over collection, the consumer is entitled to be made whole for having overpaid in that previous period, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Johnson, thank you. Any additional comment, questions, or motion, perhaps?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would move to accept staff's recommendation on this docket item.
There's been a motion to approve and issue the draft final order in docket 2020.07.088. Is there a second?
Pinocci will second.
Commissioner Pinocci has seconded. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. So let the record reflect that it was unanimous. Motion carries. All right, action item number 5. This is docket 2020.06.076, Montana Dakota Utilities, general rate case, interim increase to act on the MDU request for an interim rate increase.
Mr. Chairman, this is Gary. Can you hear me?
Hi, Gary. Yes, we can.
I was going to take the initial lead on this one. What I'd like to do, since this is for you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Fielder, this is the first time we've come before you to talk about interim increases or rate increases. I thought I would just talk briefly about what regulatory staff views as our responsibilities when we make recommendations to the commissions regarding requests for rate increases such as these. So I'd like to talk about that for probably 5 minutes, and then I was going to hand it over to Grant. Okay.
Please do so.
Okay. Well, first of all, utilities often include requests for interim increases when they file a general rate case. Interim increases have to be filed in conjunction with a general rate case. And typically, utilities will ask for interim relief, usually within 30 or 60 days after the initial rate case filing. This case was filed on June 22nd, 2020. However, when MDU filed this, they stated that they did recognize the impact of COVID-19 on its customers, and they delayed requesting an effective date for the interim until February 1st, 2021. That's why we have this in front of you now rather than earlier. While rate cases typically have a number of different intervening parties, when it comes to interim increases, we never receive any testimony from interveners regarding the appropriateness of interims. And when I'm talking interveners, I'm also talking the Montana Consumer Council. Montana Consumer Council, to my knowledge, has never weighed in on the appropriateness of an interim request. So the commission is sort of on its own when it comes to interim rate requests. Our administrative rules state that when the commission considers an interim request, that request should be based on, and I quote here, generally established principles of utility rate regulation. So that is the guidelines that we have. So when you talk about those guidelines, when we get requests for rate changes, the requests from the larger Montana utilities, such as MDU, Northwestern, Energy West, they're going to come in the form of either a rate case or a tracker. And I'm glad we just had that discussion of trackers because I want to follow up on that a little bit. I'd also note that small water utilities file rate cases with us, but small water utilities have a couple different alternatives that are available to them if they don't want to go through a full rate case. So although MDU, we're not talking today about a tracker. I wanted to just follow up on this because in Montana, utilities file 3 forms of trackers, those being property tax trackers, gas supply trackers, and electric trackers. And trackers, I think as noted by Vice Chairman Johnson, are simply a pass-through to ratepayers. In the case of taxes, they're a pass-through of taxes assessed by the Montana Department of Revenue. And the gas and electric commodity, and gas and electric trackers are simply a pass-through of the commodity price or the variable costs associated with the gas and electricity. There are 0 profits associated with trackers. For example, in the case of a gas tracker, MDU buys natural gas at a certain price for its customers, then it turns around and charges the customers the same price. So gas tracker prices will go up and down as the market price for natural gas changes. I bring up trackers because I want to make it clear that the MDU gas rate case in front of us has absolutely nothing to do with natural gas prices, okay? MDU purchases gas for its customers, and those gas costs are passed to customers on a dollar for dollar basis. If you look at a typical MDU residential bill, what you'll see is about 58% of that bill is for the cost of the natural gas, which is recovered through the tracker. Now, the other 42% of that bill is the subject of this rate case. What this rate case concerns the cost of owning and operating MDU's physical distribution system, which is used to deliver the natural gas to customers. MDU has a significant investment in that distribution delivery system, and MDU is entitled to recover the expenses and costs associated with operating that system. They're entitled to a return on that investment. But again, this has nothing to do with the price of natural gas. So, when we look at general rate cases, they are a big and they're an expensive step for utility. Utilities don't do this lightly. There are significant commitment of resources, not only for the utility, but also for the commission and interveners. I think in the last Northwestern Electric case, the last number that I saw, and it wasn't final, was I believe Northwestern had spent almost $1.5 million on that rate case. That does not include what was spent by this commission or all the interveners in that case. So they are a huge step, okay? So when we are looking at revenue requirements and formulating a recommendation for the commission, there are some general regulatory principles that we as staff look at. And first, while this is not codified, there is what generally is referred to as the regulatory compact. And what that says is that a utility will be given the opportunity, and I emphasize the word opportunity, not guarantee. Utility will be given the opportunity to earn a fair return on its investment. It will be protected from competition. And in return, the utility will provide service to all customers requiring service, and that service will be safe and reliable and provided at just and reasonable prices. So that sort of guides at the beginning of what guides us when we look at rate cases. As an aside, I would, just as a brief aside, this compact, which has been, sort of universally used by regulators, it's about 110 years old, okay? And in the 1900s, they were just rolling out electricity, right? And in Chicago, there was a number of different electric companies, numerous electric companies providing service in different areas of Chicago. There were municipal electric providers, there were private electric providers, and there was a guy named Samuel Insull, and he was from Britain. And he started his own electric company in Chicago, but he was really worried about staying in business. He was worried about the survival of his own company. But he also realized that the economies of scale that could be realized, if you had more of a monopoly type electric system, you wouldn't have the duplication of systems and that sort of thing. He realized that having all these small companies was inefficient. It was a waste of money. Prices were too high. So Insull approached the city of Chicago and told them, look, if you will protect me from competition and grant me a license to provide electric service in Chicago, I will serve the entire city, and you can regulate my prices as long as I can get a decent profit. And thus was born the regulatory compact. And Actually, the company that came out of that, which you probably heard of, was called Commonwealth Edison. So this regulatory compact has sort of guided traditional rate of return regulation for a long time. Part of that compact was that a company is entitled to earn a fair return. So when we look at rate requests and interim requests, one of the things that we look at is to see if a utility is earning, quote, a fair return. And how do you measure that? Well, we look at the return on equity of the company. So this gets to the point of what's a fair return on equity. There are two United States Supreme Court decisions, FPC, Federal Power Company versus Hope Natural Gas, and Bluefield Waterworks. These are the standard Supreme Court decisions you'll hear quoted in rate case after rate case across the United States when they're talking about standards for establishing ROEs for utilities. And basically, to paraphrase, what those standards said was that the ROE should be sufficient to maintain the financial integrity of the company, should be commensurate with other businesses at similar risk, which means you can't allow the utility to make an exorbitant profit compared to other utilities. And the ROE ought to be adequate that they can attract investors and capital on reasonable terms. I just point out that these decisions, Bluefield was 1923 and the Hope Natural Gas was 1944. So, here we have the regulatory compact's 110 years old, the Waterworks is 100 years old, and Hope Natural Gas is 80 years old. So there's not much new in the world of regulation sometimes, okay? Now, one final note on this is that those standards mentioned that you had to have an ROE that would maintain the financial integrity of a utility. And when we look at this, there are two sources of capital for utility. Those are debt and equity. When the commission sets a return for a utility, that overall return is set such that it allows the utility to cover its debt costs, which means it's able to pay its interest. And then the overall return must be adequate to provide that utility the opportunity to earn that fair return. Now, a utility has to pay its debt costs before any income accrues to the owners. That's a given. Debt holders are paid first out of utility income, okay? So if we're looking at a utility's returns, if that utility's returns start to fall, you know that what's happening is that the first thing that's going to happen is the ROE is going to fall because they always have to pay their debt costs. If those earnings fall far enough, then if the equity return gets very low, you're then in a situation where that ROE is not going to meet the standards of your being able to attract capital or maintain the financial integrity of the firm. And in some cases, you could actually get a return so low that there's no equity return to the shareholder, and the return is not sufficient to even make the debt, even cover the debt costs or pay interest. So in that particular case, you've really got a bad situation, and you could definitely say that the returns are not covering the financial integrity of the company. So just one other comment on this is that this is an interim, and basically what we're looking at is they're asking for part of their rate increase early. We still have to process the entire rate case. I believe the hearing on this is in early February. The intervener testimony has been filed. The rebuttal testimony was just filed. And there are some decisions that staff will be looking at and making recommendations to the commission. regarding the specific financials of this. But what we're looking at on an interim is more a snapshot in time. Is that, does this utility perhaps need help right now with an interim increase? So at this point, what I'd like to do with that background is, if you have any questions on that, that's great. I would turn this over to Grant, though. Grant's as our lead analyst on this, and he's put together the memorandum and the specific details regarding the earnings of the MDU at this particular time. And also, I believe Ashley and Lucas are available at this time if you have any questions on the legal aspects of this. So,
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Johnson here.
Vice Chair, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Duncan, would you just, as part of your background for this, speak briefly to what happens if that interim rate, what happens to ratepayers if that interim rate turns out to be either above or below the final tariff rate?
Chairman Brown, Commissioner, Vice Chair Johnson, interim requests are subject to refund. So if perchance the final rate decision is lower than what we gave them on an interim, then that is subject to, the over collection would be subject to a refund. I will also state that in this particular case, the Consumer Council has already filed their testimony on what they believe the proper increase in this case, what the final outcome of this case should be, and their projection of the revenue requirement required by MDU is actually greater than the interim we're proposing. So I'm fairly confident, and in the long run, the interim will be lower than what the final rate increase would be. We did have a situation with Northwestern year and a half ago, I guess, where we gave them an interim of $10.5 million or $10 million. And the final rate increase was 6.5. So in that particular case, Northwestern was required to refund that over collection with interest. Mr. Chairman.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Johnson.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe I'm correct, and that refund is with an established rate of interest to the ratepayer. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct, Vice Chairman Johnson. In fact, we recently went through I won't bore you with the details of this, but we had a motion for reconsideration in the Northwestern Electric Supply case, the PCAM case, just regarding that very issue of what the appropriate interest rate should be. And we are currently fixed on that the appropriate interest rate will be the return on equity granted to the utility.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. That was very informative. Mr. Fink.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, for that very informative information. That was very helpful and greatly appreciated. Last week, staff distributed a memorandum regarding MDU's interim request of $4.88 million. As mentioned in the memorandum, there are two key facts that stand out. One, the revenue increase recommended by the MCC exceeds the MDU interim request amount. Gary mentioned this earlier. And two, MDU's pro forma financials reflects a rated return of 2.069% and a negative a negative return on equity of 0.34% for the 2019 test year, while the MCC's testimony reflects a rate of return of 0.58% and a negative return on equity of 3.3%. These pro forma rated returns for 2019 indicate the returns are inadequate for MDU to cover its debt cost, also known as interest payments. As Gary mentioned earlier, MDU is not covering the financial integrity of the company and could be threatened. And in that situation, it may be tougher for the utility to attract investors or capital. Staff recommends granting the requested interim increase of 4.88 million. And one other important element to note here that was mentioned earlier, if the commission does approve permanent rates that are lower than the interim rates, customers are protected as interim rates are refundable with interest. Ashley, Lucas, myself, Scott, and Gary are all available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Questions? Discussion? Motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Mr. Chairman.
I yield to Commissioner Pinocci.
Commissioner Pinocci.
So, Mr. Duncan did a great job explaining everything. I appreciate that. I'm pretty sure everybody's good explanation was directed at me because I'm under a lot of pressure to explain this. MDU comes in and says we've got to close the coal-fired plant because natural gas is just so cheap. We're going to start generating electricity with natural gas with a facility that will not be in Montana. And understandably, the people in Sydney are very upset about that. Not only that, the people in Savage are probably going to lose their coal mine because without the supply going to the Sydney coal plant, they're going to have to shut down, which means the jobs and tax base for Savage is going to be a very different place than it is now. So the people of Sydney are going to be quite upset to find out after all that, they want an increase in their natural gas prices. So I think they've made a very clear message here today that, hey, we can't, be profitable. And our job as public service commissioners is to make sure that they can be profitable to continue to do business. However, it looks very difficult to explain how they're shutting down businesses in Savage, Montana, and Sydney, Montana, because gas prices are so cheap. All right, so I want to ask this question. When they go to buy natural gas, can somebody tell me where and what company they buy the natural gas from?
Mr. Fink, do you want to answer that?
Yes, Chairman Brown, Commissioner Pinocci. Is there a delay on the screen or?
I can hear you, Grant.
No, okay. I hear you fine.
Okay. Chairman Brown, Commissioner Pinocci, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong on my team, I believe there is a competitive bid process that goes out and the company then selects the correct applicant in which they wants to supply the natural gas to the utility.
Can you tell me who they currently buy their natural gas from today?
Chairman Brown, Commissioner Pinocci, I do not have that answer on me.
Mr. Duncan, do you want to answer that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Commissioner O'Donnell, do you want to answer that?
Oh, excuse me.
No, I don't have an answer to that, but I would note that the chairman of MDU is also the chairman of, and I can't recall the name of it right now, a natural gas company. So I would think it would ordinarily be assumed that they are purchasing from one of their related entities, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is Gary.
Go ahead, Gary.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can certainly look at the last gas tracker case filed by MDU and get that information to the commissioners. Okay.
Is that satisfactory, Commissioner Pinocci?
Mr. Chairman, I have a a ratepayer in Sydney, and this is what he claims, and I'm just trying to do a fact-finding mission here. He claims that if you're going to buy stock in MDU, you cannot buy stock in the company that delivers natural gas. You can only buy into MDU if you invest in the company side of MDU that sells natural gas. So what I'm told is this entity that we're talking about today, which isn't very profitable, actually buys natural gas from another part of the company, MDU, which I'm told is experiencing very good profits, perhaps record profits. Then they turn around and say they're not making any money, so they can increase the price on delivery. But yet when you invest in MDU, and I heard testimony today that they're trying to attract investors, you couldn't invest in the company that delivers natural gas if you want to. You could only deliver in the side of MDU that sells natural gas, which is doing very well. I need to have some of those answers to find out if they're true, because I think that changes staff recommendation in their testimony today. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. But the people in Sydney are watching all of us very closely here on what we're going to do here. And I got to be responsible for that. So I need to find out some of these answers if they're true or not.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Pinochi, I'd like to make a comment here. I do remember that, first of all, I believe MDU buys gas from something like 20 different suppliers. We'll have to check that. But I just reiterate once again, what's in front of us today has nothing to do with the price of gas. It is completely about the MDU distribution system. And, and their right to make a fair return on that distribution system. So we can certainly investigate the gas issues with you. As far as MDU stock, when you're buying MDU stock, you're buying MDU resources. And MDU resources, the utility part of MDU resources, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe the utility portion of MDU resources, which includes not only their gas operations, but includes their electric operations, and they operate in multiple states, that I think that's less than 20% of total revenues of MDU resources. They have some construction stuff, construction materials. Last time I looked, the MDU resources, that portion of their business was doing very well. The utility portion of their business, as I remember correct from looking at third quarter results, was actually the utility results were down in the third quarter from a year ago. But there are two distinct parts of MDU, but you do buy MDU resource stock. So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Pinochi. I appreciate Mr. Duncan's explanation, and I think he did a very good job. I want everybody to know I clearly understood they're not raising the price of gas. And the reason they would never try that is they couldn't possibly get away with it with record gas lows. They're still increasing the price of natural gas to customers. And customers in Sydney are finding that a really tough pill to swallow. Let me ask you this question. Can somebody tell me how these natural gas prices compare to Havre gas prices that we just approved, that Pinochi voted for? How do those natural gas prices compare to the Havre pipeline natural gas prices? We just increased the rate. Can someone tell me that?
Commissioner Pinochi, this is Ashley, Chairman Brown, Commissioner Pinochi, if I may jump in. I just am a little hesitant to go down this road because what's noticed on the agenda today is the interim approval for MDU's rate case. And so I'm worried we're getting a little far afield of that. So I'll just put that out there that I think we need to stick to what's been noticed on the agenda. And Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure there's a connection between the comparison of gas prices since that's not quite what we're talking about today, but I'll let Gary take it from here.
Mr. Chairman, Ashley, Commissioner Pinocci, if Commissioner Pinocci would like staff to put together some sort of comparison of natural gas prices, MDU versus the market or MDU versus Northwestern, staff would be happy to do that. And we can certainly provide that information. But it is completely beyond the scope of what we're talking about with this rate case today, but we'd be happy to put that information together, Mr. Chairman.
The chair is going to weigh in at this point. Ms. Margeau, your point is well taken. I have allowed Commissioner Pinocci some leeway here. This does impact constituents in his PSC district, so I've allowed him some leeway. But yes, we are getting far afield of the matter before us. Commissioner Pinocci, do you have additional questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's fine.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
I recognize Commissioner Fielder. Would you like to defer?
Mr. Chairman, my question is, I'm considering making a motion to table this until we can obtain a little bit further information and Commissioner Pinocci's questions can be answered. And I would like to ask staff if that motion to table until next week would present any problems with this issue calendaring.
Chairman Brown, Commissioner Fielder, this is Ashley. The interim request, MDU asked that it go into effect on February 1st. So I think if we wanted to table this for a week, that should still give us sufficient time to answer the questions and get an interim order out if that's appropriate. So I think we could do that. And because I'm remote, if anyone on the team agree or disagrees with me,
Mr. Chairman, I won't make that motion at this moment, but I'd like to hear from other staff if they have input, and also Vice Chairman Johnson was waiting to say something.
Hold on. So would you like to hear from staff or defer to?
Staff first, please.
Okay. Mr. Duncan, Mr. Fink, do you want to weigh in on Commissioner Fielder's suggestion?
Chairman Brown, Commissioner Fielder, this is Mr. Fink. As Gary and Ashley mentioned earlier, the price comparison to the Haver, what we spoke earlier, I believe is irrelevant in this matter. And like Gary said, we can definitely put together analysis comparing those gas prices. However, in this matter, to my knowledge, it would be, I don't think it would make a difference, and but it'd be a good comparison that we can definitely deliver to Mr. Pinocci. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Gary. I agree with Grant that the price of gas is basically irrelevant to what we're looking at in this particular case. As far as actually establishing the requirement for an interim revenue requirement for the distribution system. So we can certainly put that comparison together, but it will not in any way change the numbers that staff has looked at or our recommendation. But we could, but February, I don't have, in fact, I didn't get a new calendar this year. That's my own problem, but they did request February 1st as an effective date. So if it's tabled for a week and a decision is made next Tuesday, then I don't know that presents a problem if the commission approves it for getting a new rates in on February 1st. Mr. Chairman.
No, let's hear from Commissioner Johnson if he had anything to say.
Vice Chair Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that the scope of the issue before us today is extremely narrow. These questions that are being raised certainly need to be addressed, but I think it's inappropriate to address them in the scope of this particular question. We've got MCC suggesting that the interim rate is below what the final tariff rate is going to be. And I think this discussion is far more appropriate as we move through the actual rate case and the evidentiary hearing. And I would, Mr. Chairman, move that we adopt staff recommendation to grant the interim rate at this time, and that in no way impedes our ability to find answers for this at the appropriate point as we move through the rate case process, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
All right, there's been a motion by Vice Chair Johnson. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Discussion? Chair will take his prerogative at this point. Vice Chair Johnson, I agree with you. I will be voting for this motion. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed to the motion signify by saying no.
No.
And let the record reflect that Commissioner Pinocci voted no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Excellent discussion. Thank you, Mr. Duncan, for that very informative intro. All right. Moving to work session item number 6. This is docket number 2020.02.020. A lot of twos and O's in that one. Holmberg Village Water Company. This matter is Holmberg's operating ratio methodology application to implement rates for its water services in Helena, Montana, to make a final decision on the proposed application. And I believe, correct, Mr. Fink, you're handling this one?
That's correct, Chairman Brown.
Go ahead.
As you mentioned, this is in regards to Holmberg Village Water Company. I'll be abbreviating that term to Holmberg throughout this presentation. On August 19th, 2020, Holmberg filed its 3-year compliance filing in which the utility utilized the operating ratio methodology to calculate a monthly rate increase of $5.71 per customer. Holmberg is located in the Helena, Montana area and currently serves 111 customers for water only. The Montana Consumer Council petitioned to intervene on October 13th, and subsequently the commission granted intervention. Both the MCC and commission issued data requests to Holmberg, to which it responded on December 4th. Even though the ORM operating ratio methodology spreadsheet calculated a rate increase, Holmberg is not requesting one at this time. Staff finds Holmberg's request is reasonable under the circumstances, and if in the future Holmberg's financial position declines, the commission should direct Holmberg to file an application to request an increase so the utility can keep providing adequate and reliable service. Holmberg also proposed a late payment fee of $5 per month in lieu of its current 1% charge, and requested to adopt the commission's sprinkling restriction violation charges. This, to my knowledge, is the first water utility to request the commission's sprinkling restriction violation charges. Staff recommends approving Holmberg's application, and I am available to answer any questions, along with Luke Casey is also on the line. Thank you very much.
Luke,
Mr. Chairman.
Luke, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, Chairman, I don't.
Okay. Vice Chair Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we approve staff recommendation in this docket.
Vice Chair Johnson has moved to approve the staff recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner O'Donnell has seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed to the motion signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. All right. I believe that work session item number 7, which was commission-initiated PURPA rulemaking to discuss several PURPA-related rulemaking issues, has been canceled for today. I believe it has been moved to next Tuesday. Is that correct? I believe so. So we'll take up that matter next Tuesday. At this point, we move to work session item number 8. And Commissioner Fielder?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session to discuss work session item 8, staffing.
It has been so moved. I will second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The chairman will make a statement on the record at this point. Chairman notes that the presiding officer of any meeting, such as this one, including this one, may close the meeting during the time the discussion relates to a matter of individual privacy, and then if the presiding officer determines that the demands of individual privacy clearly exceed the merit of public disclosure under the Montana Constitution. The chairman asserts and avers that the discussion in the closed meeting will involve a discussion regarding internal personnel matters concerning the appointment of an interim chief legal counsel, as opposed to an interim chief legal counsel, and the status of the vacant paralegal commission secretary position, along with the duties of that commission secretary paralegal position. The discussion will include, but not necessarily be limited to, discussion of the past job performance of the former and current commission legal staff, as well as other commission employees with which they interacted. So I have determined that the privacy interests of the individuals which will be the subject of these discussions outweigh the merits of public disclosure. I have also had a request from the staff that may be discussed during this meeting that their privacy interest outweighs public disclosure. I agree with that assertion. As such, I'm closing this meeting to the public.
So, Mr. Chairman, are we adjourned here, or are we recess until the end of that executive session?
We are recessed.